Commander Rylan stepped into the silent research station, feeling a cold weight in his chest. The air felt wrong, heavy, like the station itself was holding its breath. Lights flickered above him, throwing long shadows on the walls. He expected noise, movement, voices, but there was nothing, not a single sound, not a single person, only empty halls stretching in every direction like abandoned tunnels. Rylan moved slowly, his boots echoing softly on the metal floor. He called out for the science team, but no one answered. Every door he passed was open, every room was empty, papers lay scattered on the ground, chairs were turned over, and a coffee mug lay broken near the wall. Something terrible happened here, and he could feel it in his bones. He reached the main control room. The large screen in the center was cracked, sparks blinking weakly. Rylan tapped the console and forced a playback. A video appeared, the scientists standing together, all of them pale, scared, shaking. Dr. Hale, the lead scientist, spoke with a trembling voice. "If you are seeing this, we made a mistake." Rylan leaned closer, his heart beating faster. Behind the scientists, alarms flashed red, warning symbols filling the screen. Hale continued, "We tried to study the creature from the dark zone. We thought it was dead. We thought we could learn from it. We were wrong." A loud crash sounded in the recording, the walls shaking behind the scientists. One of them screamed, another grabbed Hale's arm and shouted, "They are awake, they found us." The screen went black for a moment. When the video returned, the scientists were running, lights exploding overhead, a long shadow moving behind them, something big, something alive, something they could not see fully. The recording ended with a final scream that cut off suddenly, followed by total silence. Rylan stood frozen. He had heard rumors of the Dark Zone creatures, but no one believed they were real. Ancient stories, warnings from dying civilizations, monsters that once hunted across galaxies. But if the scientists were right, and if the creature woke up, then humanity had done something catastrophic, something that could start a war they could not win. He tried contacting Earth, but all he heard was static. He tried the nearest outpost, nothing. He tried every communication line, but the screens only flickered with white noise. It felt as if someone blocked the entire station from the rest of the galaxy. Then the lights went out, total darkness swallowed the room. Rylan felt the hair on his neck rise. He wasn't alone, he could feel a presence near him, something watching him from the shadows, something breathing without lungs, something alive without form. He took slow steps backward, reaching for his sidearm, but the moment his hand touched it, the station shook violently, metal groaned, the floor trembled, and sparks rained from the ceiling. A deep noise echoed through the structure, not like an explosion, not like machinery. It sounded like a growl, a warning growl from something massive. Rylan stumbled to the window, and his breath caught in his throat. Outside the station, something floated in the darkness, a shadow bigger than the station itself, its shape shifting like smoke, yet solid enough to block the stars behind it. It moved with no engines, no lights, no signs of technology. It moved because it wanted to. A whisper slid into Rylan's mind, soft but cold. "We are awake." Rylan froze, his heart racing. The voice wasn't human, it wasn't even close, it sounded like thousands of voices speaking as one. He stepped away from the window, but the whisper followed him, "You have touched what was forbidden." Rylan felt a sharp pain in his head, images flashing in his mind, battles across old galaxies, civilizations burning, ships falling like dust. He saw creatures of pure shadow tearing apart fleets with no weapons. He saw planets empty and silent after their arrival. The visions ended as quickly as they started, leaving him gasping for breath. The whisper returned, "We do not lose wars." Rylan knew he needed to escape. He raced toward the docking bay, the station shaking harder with every second, doors bent out of shape, walls cracked as if something was crawling through them. He heard metal tearing behind him, fast, getting closer. He didn't look back. He jumped into his patrol ship and slammed his hand on the launch button. The ship powered up, engines roared, and Rylan shot away from the station. As he looked back one last time, he saw the station slowly folding in on itself, like it was being crushed by an invisible hand. The massive shadow creature hovered behind it, watching him leave. It didn't chase him, not yet, it didn't need to. The whisper came again, calm and terrifying, "Run, human, we know your name, Commander Rylan, we know where you will go, we will find you." Rylan felt a chill spread through him as the dark creature faded from view. He knew this was not just a threat, it was a promise. humanity had awakened something ancient, something deadly, something that had never lost a war, and now, it was coming for them. Rylan's patrol ship sped through the empty darkness of space, but no matter how far he flew, he could still feel the creature's presence behind him. It was not chasing him physically, but he felt it inside his thoughts, like a cold hand pressing lightly on his mind, reminding him that running was useless. He checked the radar. It showed nothing, not even the massive shadow that destroyed the research station. It was as if the creature did not exist on any human system. That terrified him even more. How do you fight something your machines cannot even see? Rylan switched to manual mode. His hands trembled slightly as he entered the coordinates for the nearest human defense fleet. If anyone could help him understand this creature, it was them. He hoped he wasn't bringing danger straight to them. Minutes later, a cluster of lights appeared ahead, the human protectorate fleet, 12 powerful ships, each armed with weapons strong enough to break asteroids in half. Rylan felt a small sense of relief. He wasn't alone anymore. A voice crackled through his comms, "Commander Rylan, your signal vanished for hours, report immediately." Rylan tried to explain, but the moment he said the word, "creature," the comms filled with static, his voice turned into noise. He tried again, and again the static swallowed his words. Something was blocking communication, something intelligent. Then the lights flickered inside his ship. Darkness filled the cockpit for 2 seconds. When the lights came back, Rylan heard it again, the many-voiced whisper, "You cannot warn them." Rylan clenched his teeth. He forced himself not to panic. He turned off the ship's internal comms and activated an old manual beacon instead. It was simple, ancient, but harder to block. A ship from the human fleet locked onto his signal and guided him toward their main cruiser. As soon as Rylan docked, soldiers surrounded him. They asked questions, rapid and confused. Rylan tried to talk, but his words kept breaking. He felt something interfering with every attempt to explain, like invisible fingers twisting his voice. General Eric, a tall man with silver hair and hard eyes, stepped forward. "Commander, you look like you saw death itself." Rylan swallowed. "General, something is coming, something old, something powerful." Before he could say more, the ship shook, everyone stopped, the lights dimmed, a cold wind blew through the hall even though there was no airflow. Whispering sounds filled the space, soft but impossible to ignore. Then an alarm screamed through the cruiser, "Unidentified presence detected near the fleet, all units alert." The soldiers rushed to their positions. Rylan and the general hurried to the command deck. The main screen showed space ahead, empty and quiet, nothing unusual, nothing dangerous. But Rylan felt it, like a shadow breathing behind the stars. "It's here," he said quietly, "it's watching us." Suddenly, ship after ship reported the same strange problem. All scanners were failing, weapons remained online, but the targeting systems refused to lock onto anything. It was as if something was jamming the entire fleet at the same time. Then one of the smaller escort ships fired its weapons at empty space. The bright laser beams vanished into nothing. The crew on board that ship screamed over the radio, claiming something was inside their minds, showing them illusions, making them see their worst fears. The general ordered them to calm down, but before he finished speaking, the escort ship bent in half silently, like someone crushed it with invisible force. The screen showed the ship folding until it looked like broken paper, then it exploded into dust. The entire command deck went silent. All eyes stared at the empty space where the ship had been. No attacker, no weapon, no trace of anything, only silence. Then the creature finally revealed itself. Not visually, not physically, but through every mind in the fleet. Every soldier froze for a moment as a whisper crept into their thoughts, like a cold voice speaking from inside their skulls. "You woke us," it said, "you touched what was forbidden." General Eric clenched his jaw. "Identify yourself," he demanded, though his voice shook slightly. The creature answered, "We are the Khar'teth, the first hunters, the end of empires." Images rushed into everyone's minds, not from screens but from the creature itself, images of ancient battles, planets burning, fleets dying without firing a shot, entire star systems falling into silence. The Khar'teth fought with thought and fear, not with metal and fire. One soldier collapsed, screaming, his mind overloaded. Another fell to his knees, crying. The creature didn't attack the ships, it attacked the people first. Rylan tried to fight the visions. He shouted to the general, we can't fight it like this, it knows what we think. The creature spoke again, the one who opened the seal will lead us. Everyone turned to Rylan. He stared back in confusion and horror. I didn't open anything, he whispered. But the creature disagreed. You touched the echo of the seal when you watched the message, it whispered, you carry the mark now. The fleet began to shake as shadows gathered in the darkness, shapes forming slowly, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, every one of them larger than ships, moving like living storms. The Khar'teth whispered again, run if you wish, but your fear only feeds us. Rylan knew one thing for sure, humanity had not provoked one creature, they had awakened an entire species. And now, they were all coming. The fleet drifted through the dark space, silent and shaking. Everyone on board felt the presence of the Khar'teth pressing against their minds. The fear was spreading fast, fear that the creature seemed to enjoy. Rylan stood on the command deck, breathing hard, trying to stay calm. He felt the mark inside his mind, a burning spot behind his eyes, like someone had touched his thoughts and left a stain. General Eric watched him closely. Commander, whatever this thing wants, it believes you are the key. Rylan shook his head. I didn't do anything, I only watched the message. But even he knew that was a weak answer. The Khar'teth didn't speak randomly, they knew things, they saw things, they were inside his thoughts, and that terrified him more than anything else. Before anyone could react, the fleet lights turned red. A new signature appeared on the radar, slow, steady, and small compared to the Khar'teth shadows. It wasn't human, it wasn't Khar'teth either, it was something else. A strange ship drifted into view, thin and curved like a crescent, covered in glowing lines that pulsed like veins. It looked alive, not built. The ship sent a single message in an alien language, but before the humans could translate it, a figure appeared on the main deck in a flash of white light. Soldiers aimed their weapons instantly. Rylan froze. General Eric raised a hand for silence. The figure was tall, thin, and covered in silver robes that shimmered like starlight. Its face was hidden behind a smooth mask, glowing from the inside. It stood calmly, as if completely unaffected by the fear choking the humans. I am the archivist, the figure said, its voice soft and layered, and I come because you have awakened the Khar'teth. The room went silent again. The archivist turned toward Rylan, and you carry their attention. Rylan swallowed. Why me, what do they want? The archivist lifted a hand, and a three-dimensional image appeared above the deck. It showed the galaxy as a swirl of lights, but then dark patches spread across it, consuming the lights one by one. Long ago, the Khar'teth ruled this galaxy, the archivist said. They did not rule with ships or weapons, they ruled with terror. Everyone watched as shapes resembling the Khar'teth shadows drifted across the galaxy. They were the strongest species ever known, undefeated, unstoppable. The archivist continued. Thousands of civilizations tried to fight them, but the Khar'teth never lost a war. Rylan felt cold. How were they stopped? The archivist's voice grew heavy. They were not stopped, they simply vanished. General Eric frowned. Vanished. Yes, the archivist said, they retreated into the dark zone, where no light and no mind could follow. We believed they chose silence, or sleep, but we were wrong, they were waiting. The fleet shook as more Khar'teth shadows appeared at the edge of the scanners. They were gathering, watching, growing in number like a storm preparing to strike. The archivist stepped closer to Rylan. Humans opened a seal created by their enemies, a seal meant to keep them asleep. When your scientists touched the ancient artifact, they broke the last protection. Rylan felt his hands shaking. The message, the recording, that's when they noticed us. The archivist nodded slowly, and when you watched the message, you connected to the echo of the seal. They saw you, they marked you. Rylan felt a sinking dread. Why me, what do they want from me? The archivist's mask glowed brighter. The Khar'teth do not chase bodies, they chase minds. You touched the echo, which means you can open what they need. What do they need? Rylan whispered. The archivist paused. A door. The entire deck felt colder. A door to what? General Eric asked. A door to the realm they were banished from, the archivist answered. A door that only a marked mind can unlock fully. You are the key, Commander, and that is why they are hunting you. Rylan staggered back. You mean if they catch me, they can return at full power? They can return with their entire swarm, the archivist corrected, not just these shadows, but the true Khar'teth, the ones that ended galaxies. Suddenly the lights flickered, the whispering returned, stronger, sharper, filling every corner of the deck. "We see you, human," the Khar'teth voice said, "the archivist cannot hide you." The archivist raised a glowing hand, forming a shield of white light around the deck. The whispering faded but did not vanish. "We do not have much time," the archivist said, "the Khar'teth are getting stronger every moment you hesitate." Rylan clenched his fists. "What can we do to stop them?" The archivist looked at him. "There is only one way to stop a species that has never lost. You must learn their secret, the thing even they fear." Rylan blinked. "The Khar'teth fear something." "Yes," the archivist whispered, "but the knowledge comes with danger. To find the truth, you must go where no human has ever gone, into the dark zone itself." General Eric slammed a hand on the table. "That is suicide." The archivist shook its head. "It is the only path that can save your kind." Rylan looked out the window. The Khar'teth shadows grew thicker like a storm swallowing the stars. Their whispers kept pressing into his mind, calling his name, wanting him to surrender. He turned back to the archivist. "Tell me what I need to do." For the first time, the archivist sounded afraid. "You must enter the place where light dies, and where thought is hunted." Rylan felt the ground shift under him as the fleet trembled once more. The Khar'teth were closing in, and time was running out. The archivist whispered the final warning: "If you fail, humanity will not have a second chance." The archivist's warning echoed through the command deck, and Rylan felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders like a heavy chain. Outside the ship windows, the Khar'teth shadows continued to grow, drifting closer, twisting and stretching like living storms waiting to swallow the fleet. Every soldier in the room could feel their thoughts becoming heavier, slower, and colder, as if the creatures were already pulling at their fear. General Eric forced himself to stand tall, even though the tension in his jaw showed his fear. "Commander Rylan," he said quietly, "if entering the dark zone is our only chance to stop them, then we must prepare." Rylan nodded, though inside he felt torn. The dark zone was more than dangerous. It was a place no species ever returned from, a region of space where light itself faded, where time felt different, where minds were said to break apart like glass. But he also knew this was no ordinary threat. The Khar'teth would not stop. They would keep hunting him, and through him, humanity. Before Rylan could speak, the ship suddenly shook again. Alarms blared as the lights dimmed to red. Soldiers rushed to stations as the sensors detected something massive sliding closer. The air temperature dropped sharply, frost forming along the edges of the windows even though the systems were stable. "They're pushing into the ship's mind," the archivist said, its glowing mask flickering. "They are trying to weaken the crew before the attack." General Eric cursed under his breath. "Status report." He snapped at his officers, but the officers' screens flickered with random symbols, lines of text shifting too fast to read. The Khar'teth were corrupting the systems, rewriting them with their mental interference. "General," one officer said with a shaking voice, "the shadows, they aren't attacking, they're circling us." On the screen, the Khar'teth forms drifted around the fleet in a slow, deliberate spiral, like predators walking around their prey, choosing the moment to strike. Rylan felt a pulse of pain behind his eyes. The mark burned again, sharper this time. A whisper slid into his thoughts, louder than before. "Come to us, Rylan," it said, "stop running." He squeezed his eyes shut and forced the voice out, breathing shakily. "We need a plan," he said, "and fast." The archivist stepped forward. "There is a way to reach the dark zone without the Khar'teth following immediately, but it requires great risk." General Eric stared. "Name it." The archivist raised a hand, and a star map appeared above the deck, highlighting a narrow corridor of space hidden behind warped gravitational waves. "This passage leads into the outer edge of the dark zone," the archivist said. "It is old, unstable, and nearly impossible to navigate." Rylan frowned. "So it's a death trap?" "Yes," the archivist replied calmly, "but the Khar'teth cannot enter it without slowing their form. It would buy you time." General Eric shook his head. "We cannot risk the entire fleet in that passage." "You won't," the archivist said, "only Rylan needs to go." The words hit the room like a cold shock. Soldiers turned to look at Rylan with a mix of fear and sympathy. Rylan felt his stomach twist. "You mean alone?" The archivist nodded. You carry the mark, only you can unlock the truth hidden inside the dark zone, the rest of humanity cannot follow, this is a path only the marked mind can walk. Rylan swallowed hard, he wanted to argue, to refuse, but he knew deep inside that the archivist was right. If humanity stayed close to him, the Khar'teth would destroy everything trying to reach him, being near him was a danger to everyone. General Eric stepped closer and put a firm hand on Rylan's shoulder. You don't have to do this, he said quietly, we can find another way. Rylan shook his head slowly. General, they're here because of me, he said, if I stay, the fleet will die, if I leave, maybe they have a chance. The archivist lifted its glowing staff, the light widening into a spherical shield. The decision must be made now, it said, the Khar'teth are preparing to strike. As if responding to the archivist's words, the entire fleet shook violently, the shadows outside surged forward, no longer circling but converging, their forms merged into a massive wave of darkness moving toward the human ships. The whispers turned into screams inside the crew's minds, pushing them to panic. General Eric shouted commands, shields up, all ships prepare for impact, but the shields were already flickering, bending under pressure that wasn't physical but mental. The Khar'teth were crushing the ships with fear, with thought, with their ancient power. Rylan stepped toward the center of the deck, breathing fast, his heart pounded loudly, but he forced his hands not to shake. Tell me how to reach that corridor, he said to the archivist, tell me what I must do. The archivist touched Rylan's forehead lightly, a sudden blast of images burst into Rylan's mind, stars shifting, gravity tearing open, a narrow passage through chaos, a tunnel of warped space that twisted like a living maze. He gasped, stepping back as the knowledge burned into him. You now know the path, the archivist said, but you must go alone and immediately. The fleet lights went out completely for a moment, darkness swallowed everything. When the lights returned, half the fleet's systems were failing, officers shouted warnings, ships were losing control, the Khar'teth shadows were only seconds from impact. Rylan turned to General Eric one last time. If I don't make it back, he began, but Eric raised a hand. You will, the general said firmly, you are human, and humans don't break as easily as these creatures think. Explosions echoed through the hull as the Khar'teth wave rushed closer. Rylan ran toward the docking bay, the archivist followed him, raising a final shield to slow the incoming shadows. As Rylan boarded a fast scout ship, the archivist spoke softly, inside the dark zone, your greatest enemy will not be the Khar'teth. Rylan paused, then who? The archivist whispered, your own mind. The docking bay doors opened as the shadows crashed into the fleet. Rylan launched the ship forward, heading straight toward the unstable corridor of warped space. Behind him, the Khar'teth screamed his name in 1,000 voices. Ahead of him, the dark zone waited like the open jaws of an ancient beast. And Rylan flew into it without looking back. Rylan's scout ship ripped through space as the Khar'teth shadows smashed into the human fleet behind him. He didn't look back, he didn't dare. The moment he entered the gravitational corridor the archivist showed him, the stars around him stretched like long white lines, bending and twisting as if reality itself was being pulled apart. The ship rattled violently, alarms screaming even though nothing physical was hitting him. The walls shook as invisible pressure pushed against the hull. Hold together, Rylan whispered under his breath, just a little more. The path ahead spiraled like a tunnel made of broken mirrors. Each reflection showed something different, sometimes stars, sometimes darkness, sometimes monstrous shapes that melted when he blinked. Rylan gripped the controls tightly, sweat running down his neck. The archivist was right, this place felt alive, watching him, examining him, testing him. A whisper brushed his mind, soft at first, you do not belong here. Rylan froze, his heartbeat quickened. He recognized that voice. It wasn't the Khar'teth, it was older, colder, deeper. He tried to clear his mind and keep the ship steady, but the voice came again, louder this time, turn back, human. He shook his head firmly. No, he muttered, I have to see what's inside. The tunnel's walls began shifting, forming faces that pulled back into darkness. The ship's lights flickered, screens flashed with images he did not understand, galaxies breaking, stars collapsing, crowds of strange beings screaming before turning into dust. Rylan felt his thoughts slipping, like someone was trying to pull him out of himself. He slapped himself across the face hard, forcing his mind back into focus. Not now, he said, not here. Suddenly the tunnel ended with a violent flash, the ship shot out into absolute darkness, not like normal space darkness, but something deeper, thicker, like black fog hiding everything. Rylan felt a heavy weight inside his chest, as if the darkness itself was pressing against him. He activated the ship lights, but they barely reached a few meters before fading. It was like the dark swallowed the light instantly. Rylan had never seen anything like it. His breath turned cold as he whispered, "This is the dark zone." But then he realized something worse. He couldn't hear the Khar'teth, not even their whispers. For the first time since this nightmare began, their voices were gone. Maybe the archivist was right, Rylan said, maybe they can't follow me here. He allowed himself a single breath of relief, but it didn't last long. A sudden thud echoed from the left side of the hull, then two more, then five, like something tapping gently on the ship. Rylan turned slowly, staring at the dark window. Nothing moved, but something was there, watching from the other side of the glass, pressing closer with each tap. The tapping stopped, replaced by a faint scratching sound. Rylan took a step back, his pulse spiked. "Show yourself," he whispered, even though he regretted saying it. A shape appeared slowly, not outside, but inside his mind. The darkness twisted into form, revealing a tall figure with no face, just a smooth black surface that reflected nothing. It stood still, silent, waiting. Rylan tried to speak, but the figure moved without moving, suddenly standing right behind him inside the ship, even though the door never opened. Rylan spun around, but the figure vanished, leaving only a cold echo in the air. He grabbed the controls and pushed the thrusters forward, wanting to get away from whatever was playing with his senses. The ship resisted, as if something was pulling it backward. "Let me go," Rylan growled, pushing harder on the throttle. But instead of moving forward, the ship drifted sideways, revealing something massive ahead, a shape bigger than any planet he had ever seen, floating silently in the black fog. It wasn't rock, and it wasn't metal. It pulsed like a beating heart, glowing faintly with dull red veins as if something alive was sleeping inside it. Then Rylan felt the mark on his forehead burn like fire. He screamed, the pain slicing through his skull. Images flooded his mind again, but these were different from the Khar'teth's illusions. He saw the ancient seal the archivist spoke of, a seal older than stars, a seal meant to trap something powerful, something worse than the Khar'teth. He saw a memory, not his own, a group of alien beings building the seal, their faces full of fear, not hatred, fear of what was inside. They weren't fighting the Khar'teth, they were hiding from something deeper, something behind them in the dark zone. The vision shattered, and Rylan gasped for air. The pulsing giant ahead of him was the thing they sealed, the true reason the Khar'teth once ruled the galaxy. The Khar'teth were not the masters, they were the servants, servants of something still asleep in the dark. Rylan whispered, trembling, this is what they fear. Suddenly, the Khar'teth voices returned, thousands of whispering screams bursting into his mind all at once. "Do not wake it," they cried, "do not go closer." Rylan froze. The Khar'teth were afraid, truly afraid. Their voices trembled like prey, not predators. "You fear this thing," Rylan said shakily. "You, the greatest hunters, fear what's inside that." The Khar'teth whispered desperately, "Leave, human, leave before it opens." Before Rylan could move, the giant structure pulsed brighter. A crack appeared along its surface, light spilling out like molten gold. The darkness around it rippled as if something inside was stretching, waking, remembering it had been locked away. Rylan's ship shook violently, alarms blaring. The creature inside the seal was waking up. The crack widened, and a low, impossible sound rumbled through the dark zone, a voice older than galaxies, deeper than gravity, calling out to something beyond time. Rylan stared, unable to move, unable to breathe. He felt his entire body go cold. Then the ancient voice spoke a single word. "Free." The seal broke. The darkness exploded outward. And everything went white.